My name is Leah Wallace. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Education Programs Manager for the American Shakespeare Center, and it is my joy and privilege to get to speak tonight with all of you and with our directors and playwright for the upcoming spring shows. I'm going to say some informational and positive words about them as by way of introduction. And then I have some questions that I have prepared because it's my job, and we'll talk for about 30 minutes, and then I'll open it up to you all and whatever questions, comments, or compliments you have to give at that time. So Constance Swain is a veteran actor of this stage, appearing in more than 25 shows over 5 seasons. Some of my favorite roles she has done with the ASC include Rosalind in As You Like It, Cleopatra in Shaw's Caesar and Cleopatra, Antigone in Antigone, and Perdita in The Winter's Tale. Last year, she directed the Mary Baldwin University Shakespeare and Performance MFA students in The Night of the Burning Pestle on this stage. And this year, she is making her ASC directorial debut in our world premiere production of Little Women, opening tonight. Next to Constance is Erin Riley, a classically trained director, actor, and playwright who specializes in adapting classical stories for modern audiences. Her update of Louisa May Alcott's Little Women has been produced 8 times since its debut in 2019, but this time it's been revamped especially for the unique Blackfriars Playhouse. Erin has also performed in dozens of plays and musicals since the tender age of 12. Favorite roles include Helen in Neil LaBute's Fat Pig, the nurse in Romeo and Juliet, Mistress Overdone in Measure for Measure, Lady Macduff in Macbeth, and Mrs. Peachum in Threepenny Opera. And then at the end of our row, last but certainly not least, Paul Barnes is the founding producing director / artistic director of Great River Shakespeare Festival in Winona, Minnesota. He first appeared on stage as a flower in his 2nd grade class's production of The Nutcracker at Evangeline M. Post Elementary School. If you put it on your website, I will find it. And the rest is history. He started directing almost as soon as he started acting and has built a career as a storyteller of Shakespeare, musicals, revues, new plays, and classics in all sorts of venues, with resources ranging from minimal to lavish. He is also making his ASC directing debut in this spring's production of King Lear, opening February 14th, 15th, 15th.
It's my birthday.
Oh my God, happy birthday! We planned that just for you. So welcome all of you. First things first, I would love to hear about each of your whys for doing what you do. Why theater? Why here? Why this play now? Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. I loved The Lion King, and when I was little, I loved Scar's Be Prepared, that musical number, and I would perform it all the time for my grandmother and her friends when they would come over. And it was as if she believed that I was Scar, I was a little lion, and I thought to myself, wow, if you believe it, then maybe others will too. And that was sort of my first taste of performance, which was just for my family, and why this play here right now? Wow, I think there's not a better time for it. One of the things that Erin and I have spoken about at length is that I had no relationship with this story before this time because I didn't see myself in it. Every portrayal I'd ever seen, I didn't look like any of the people in it at all. And that has changed. And what I've learned is that what is defined as classic needs to be revamped where everybody, regardless of what they look like, where they come from, we can all see it and point to ourselves and say, there I go, that's me right there. So that's why this play right here, right now.
Wonderful. For me, the why of theater, much like Scar and the Flower, for me, I saw the 1980s production of Annie with Albert Finney, and was about 5 years old at the time, and 5-year-old me identified with Miss Hannigan. So that's all you need to know about me, I guess. But I grew up a person of size, and you know, in the 80s and 90s, a person who looked like me was often told, this is not a space for you. So I made a space for myself, and in that space, made space for other people who look like me, like Constance, like so many of us. And one of the beautiful things about this play right now is that, and I'm sorry, I'm turning red because I'm getting emotional. This play right now is that I was gifted with a beautiful Black woman who took my dream of making this classical story relatable to many different types of people, and she saw it through a different lens. So it is often not a play I recognize because it's so much better with her touch. So now it's our Little Women, not just one group of people's Little Women, and that's my why. Oh.
Well, I've been in search of another role as a flower for some years. I mean, that was second grade. That was a little while ago. But the theater has always provided, space for me. I'm gay, and a little bit outside whatever was considered, I guess, the norm or whatever. And there was always space in the theater for me. And so that's one reason why I think I've stuck with it. But I also set out to be an architect. And I loved designing houses when I was a kid. And I think it was an escape for me from a somewhat dysfunctional family. And then I got up against college math and engineering. And I became involved in theater when I was in high school, my junior year. And I didn't realize it until later, but as immediately as I was drawn to acting, I was also drawn to directing. It just took me a little while to realize that. I did write a play. My junior year of high school, I wrote a play because I was inspired.
I love it.
It was called, I was inspired in my first drama classes, it was called The Orphan's Christmas.
Aww.
It was produced once in my garage, and I've never seen the light of day since. But anyway, I became involved in theater in high school, and then when architecture didn't really work out for me, I went back and have had, just a kind of long, steady career in the theater, directing, administrating theater programs. I was education director at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival for a number of years. Been associate artistic director, and as Leah pointed out, I've directed a wide range of material, including a lot of Shakespeare. And one day I looked at my email, and there was a message from Vanessa Morosco, who I knew of, and our paths had almost crossed, but we had never met. And she wanted to know if I might be interested in directing King Lear. And I said, I'm always interested in directing King Lear. What a great story. And so that's why I'm here.
Fabulous. So I don't know if this rings true for everyone, but I didn't have the easiest time comparing King Lear and Little Women in terms of like vibe. I just, but something that is definitely true about both of these shows is that they are different types of adaptations. Little Women obviously began as a novel, and the uncut King Lear runs over 3 hours, and I will argue strongly was designed for 14 people, and we are doing it in 2 hours with 9. And so I'd love to know from each of you, what is something from your original text that you wanted to make sure made it through all of the layers of transmission that adaptation requires, so that our audiences would receive kind of uncut that aspect of the story? I love the thinking faces. It's my favorite.
There's reference often to Professor Bear's accent, and that was something that really stood out to me in particular because of our casting, which, no spoilers, but you'll come and see. Because it's multi-layered for our production, which really does lean into the relevancy. And for those who catch it, we did, not last night, but the night before, a run of it, and it was really nice to have fresh ears and eyes and hear the way the word accent was coined and who it was referencing, and hear a universal, it hit different, and I look forward for you to see why.
Louisa May Alcott has a line, "I could never love anything or anyone as I love my sisters," that Jo says about her 4 sisters. And Little Women, at its very foundation and its very core, is a story about love. All kinds of love: familial love, romantic love, love of othered people. Jo March herself is a very othered character, a boyish character in a time when that was not the correct way to be. And I think now more than ever, we need stories about love. And we need stories about love that belong to everyone, not just to some people, not just to people who deserve it, because sometimes we know those who don't deserve love are the most in need of it. And I think that that is the thing that I wanted to hold on to and make sure that regardless of who's playing Jo, who's playing Marmee, who's playing Professor Bear, who's playing whatever, that everybody is kind of getting an idea that each of these people is inherently loved for who they are. They keep clapping.
Audiences will do that.
I think Lear is also about love and also involves daughters.
Yes.
3 sisters. And it's about mistaken love and misperception of love and learning how to value love and be aware of love. If you're familiar at all with King Lear and the story, the precipitating event is when Lear invites his 3 daughters. He's ready to give up his kingdom and divide it into thirds and give each of his daughters a third of the kingdom, but he wants to hear them profess their love for him, and that will somehow affect what part of the kingdom he gives them. And from that profession of love, the story unfolds rather rapidly and is paralleled, with the story of the Gloucester family, in which there are 2 sons, one who is legitimate and one who is illegitimate. And again, a father who doesn't really perceive the true love, genuine, authentic love. So there's a lot to learn in the play about, the stories of love, the through lines of love in the play. And I think in approaching, the production and knowing that, the ground rules were try to get it down to 2 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes, so we're not going past 2 hours and 30 minutes, at which point, as Leah and I talked, the buses start revving their engines, and the students have to go back to school. What I wanted to do was to focus on those 2 through lines as much as I can, and to not rob the actors of as much meat and potatoes in the words of the play. I'm a kind of a fanatic about language. I'm not a real fan of the translations, so-called translations of Shakespeare's plays, although we certainly do change words to make them more, comprehensible to a modern audience. But I just wanted the actors each of the 9 actors in the company, to be able to sink their teeth into something. So we eliminated some characters. There are no husbands in this play.
All right.
No husbands! Reagan is crazy.
And, which managed to, in one case in particular, really beef up one of the daughters' roles, Regan, and then in another case provide Goneril with some real problems to conquer, because so much of what she does in the course of the story depends on her husband and what he does and who he is. But those were my goals: preserve the language and give the actors something to really sink their teeth into, and to do my best, in this particular case, to avoid what I think of as the Monty Python Shakespeare with small casts, when you have people doubling and tripling and continually changing hats and changing costume pieces and coming on as somebody new and then going off and never seeing them again. So we worked on reducing that as much as we could. So.
As much as we could. No, I think we did a good job.
Yeah, High five.
Woohoo! So Erin.
Yes.
This is very exciting for us because our playwright is usually super dead.
I am not.
And you are
I'm alive.
super alive.
I am super alive.
And not only are you super alive, but you are super available to the
Yes.
whole team throughout the course of the production. And I would love to hear about the actual alive collaboration that went on between you and Constance, you and the actors, and all of you with the script as you were rehearsing this production.
Oh, this is fun. So this has been, my theater career has spanned more than 2 decades, but this has been one of the most unique experiences that I've had. And I've said it to Vanessa, I've said it to Constance, I've said it to anybody who will listen. You know that part in Shakespeare in Love where he's like writing the pages as the play is happening? There was a point where during our table read, we were kind of digging into the script and, finding where the new information was coming and, rhetorically what we were talking about, those kinds of things. People would have questions or, a line would kind of stick and I'd be like, wait, I can rewrite that. And was like on Zoom rewriting, as we were going. And as we went along, people in the cast and on the artistic team would say, what do you think about this? And my overall answer to it was, so granted. Because I am not precious about the words that I have written because, spoiler alert, it's not my idea. I just took the original idea and improved upon it in some ways. But this has been just an exercise in theater. We talk a lot about collaboration. We might get it 45% of the time in the true realm and meaning of the word. If I was worried about every single thing that I wrote being meticulously remembered on the stage, it's only my play. And when I can talk with the director and tailor and nip and tuck. I'm a Bridgerton fan, so I keep referring to myself as the modiste. So if I can nip and tuck to make the play fit, then what happens is it becomes our play and not my play. And we all get to play, which is the point. So it has been a dream come true, like just joy. And it just keeps getting, you know how like when you do some things, it's like a sludge and like, you're like, oh man, I gotta do this thing, not this. Like this is just joy personified and it just keeps getting better. I can't wait for you to see it. I can't wait for you to see it.
We're gonna applaud again.
Sorry, I'm a talker, Paul.
No. Yes, Erin has been the best partner in crime. We have just every step of the way. To know that we had someone who was really supporting the story that we were trying to tell, because we were trying to find it. It was everything was great that was written, and we, as we were looking in ways to really like focus where exactly the story lied and what was our story within the world of Little Women, knowing that we had her as not only a resource as the playwright, but she has done all of this dramaturgy work, and there were specific questions, in particular for our colored folks in the play of what's my place in this? And as someone who has been in a number of classics, Mary Ann Dashwood and Sense and Sensibility, all those kinds of things, it's important that we have those conversations so that we as a team, as a company, as storytellers, can decide what is our world. And it's not just checking off a box, but that it matters and how that influences and where that might inspire certain things. And Erin, when we spoke about this, she came back with all of this fleshed out, helpful dramaturgy, and it was something that sort of echoing back to what Paul said, where the actors could latch onto it, that it wasn't just this arbitrary thing, and that was for everyone. And I mean, yeah, just having a collaborative partner in this has been so wonderful, because let me tell you, if she was fighting every step of the way, I don't know that we would be ready to go. But because we had someone who entrusted trusted us and really let us lead and find and discover in the room. I mean, as Erin said, I think that we had a great play to begin with, but now it is excellent and it is ours, and I'm so thrilled. Yeah.
So Paul, you have directed in, as I mentioned at the beginning, all sorts of resourced spaces, right? From the minimal to the lavish. But this is your first time directing in our Blackfriars Playhouse. And I think this space is very special. I'm just wondering what obstacles, what opportunities have you run into in your first time working in this particular laboratory?
Well, I found it to be incredibly comfortable. I love it because Shakespeare's plays were written for this space, for this kind of space. So they fit really easily and really naturally in the space. So it's been a joy to come and work in here every day. I've loved it. And I love that our production is so simple and so minimal. I mean, I think we've got, 2 crates? I think that's what we've got, and some bodies.
That's all you need. Yeah. Especially with this group.
Your job as a director becomes that of a sculptor, especially when you're working in a thrust space. If you're on a proscenium, you're more of a painter. But our jobs are to, figure out where the story is, how it's being told, and how to get the audience to see where the story is being told. And in this kind of space, it's really about sculpting the space in that kind of way, which has been thrilling. Now, from my architecture background, I could be getting myself into trouble here, but I do wish that some theater consultants had a larger hand in designing the space because the sight lines are problematic. And if you're experienced playgoers here at the Blackfriars, you may have experienced that. Other than that, I just think it's terrific. I've really, really enjoyed it.
What problematic sight lines? I don't know what you mean. That's true. They are not. There have been many iterations of levels of chandeliers, but that's not what we're here to discuss. One more question from my prepared list, and then I will throw it over to you. So be prepared. Constance, I've seen you perform on this stage so many times in so many wonderful shows, and I am so excited to get to see the show that you sculpt instead of being the marble this time. And I would love to hear about how your experience in this room as a performer informed your directing style.
Oh, bruh, every step of the way. It informed, let me talk. It informed everything. I mean, I am so thankful for the amount of experience that I've had in this space because it helps me in my preparation because I was able to visualize things because I really, could just viscerally put myself there and could, even something as logistical as, if that person exits stage left and I want them to, next thing is a stage or as a house right entrance, do they have enough time? I could figure that out because I've done it. And that was, even down to that, it's just been so informative and in terms of just how we tell stories here, being able to give these actors tools. In particular, we've got 3 new actors who will be making their debut tonight. I'm very excited for them. Yes. They deserve a round of applause. And they are excellent and fit the ASC so beautifully. And it's been wonderful to be able to give them those tips and tricks that I had to just sort of learn along the way. So to be able to tell them, hey, just again, those little sightline things and being mindful of certain things and how you really play this space to utilize it for its magic. Because the magic of this space is the things that someone may look at and say it lacks. I think it doesn't lack. I think it opens up other opportunity because that's imagination. And no amount of sets, lights can ever top what imagination can do. And that's something that I've learned here firsthand as a performer, and to be able to gift that over and remind those who have been in this space and then show those and tell those who are new, hey, it's in your hands. If you tell it to us, we'll believe it. And it's been, it's been super informative and helpful. Yeah.
Well, as promised, It is your turn. What questions might you all have for our fabulous panel of people up here? You can raise a hand and I will call on you, or I will keep talking. I will. It's a threat. And a challenge.
I think they're a little shy.
Okay, Blair.
Hi. I want to tell you two that I am bringing somebody to see Little Women who has never been to a play in her life. This will be her first experience seeing a play.
I
And if
love
that goes well, I'll bring her to Lear. And she is a Joe. So she'll relate. I have two questions. As you adapt this for Theater with the Lights On, did it color anything in your adaptation this round?
Oh, it absolutely did. I think one of the reasons that I'm very lucky to be here is because Vanessa Morosco found me somewhere in the depths of online playwriting things and whatnot. But she read my play and said, this really translates to shared light. And I've worked with shared light in the past, and the character of Jo is built in this adaptation to directly speak to the audience. So it definitely helped us in the world building of the way that she is telling. I am telling you the story through Jo. I too am a Jo, and an Amy, and a Meg, and a Beth. Because I think we're all many of the facets of the face of the gem there. But it really lends itself. Also, this one has used every square inch of this space. So when I tell you that there is galloping, there is cavorting, there is things happening in all directions, it is in stereo. We were able to take that one step farther, I think, to be able to directly connect with our audience and know that our audience is a part of the story, not just listening to the story. Did that answer your question? Oh, yeah. Okay.
You said you had two?
I did. I'm just checking to see. For Paul, what character in Lear do you identify with the most on the inside? Which do you like the least?
Oh, that's a boy.
That's a good
personal question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm not sure. Sometimes I identify with the fool because the fool is, the allowed truth teller, and I think that's often the role of the theater artist, allowed truth tellers. The fool pushes the envelope, so to speak, about how far can, the fool get away with telling the truth before they get slapped down. So there's that. Certainly, I would say, Cordelia in many respects, just because of fidelity of love, and the ways in which you can maintain love and loyalty. Probably to a certain extent, Lear. Something about giving up the crown but not the power, or giving up.
Yeah.
Who do you like the least?
Who do I like the least in King Lear? I like them all.
Really?
Yeah, I like them all.
Everyone's got a point.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I know, truly, I do.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, but I think that's another, part of the role of the director is to get inside, each of the characters and understand their motivation and what it is that triggers them and why they take on the actions that they take on. The thing about Shakespeare is that he cannot keep his hands off the human soul. And so you just have to go, to that level and find what he's doing there, with the human soul. What is it in that character that he wrote, that he created or adapted from another story, that he wanted to reach people? So Yeah.
Even Oswald?
Even Oswald.
Okay, all right, okay. Any other questions? Yes, Aubrey.
Question. So aside from the obvious connections between the two plays with the daughters and families and things like that, what connections, and this is for everybody, what connections are you hoping our audiences will make between your two productions, aside from
You know, I hope that folks come and see this, both shows, the entire season really, and that it changes them in some way. And what I know that's so like generic, but I feel like when you see Little Women or you see Lear, it makes you pause and really appreciate the present and think deeply about relationships and maybe those relationships that have been soured that you haven't touched in a bit, and maybe you'll make a different choice. You'll reach out to that person. You'll tell them you love them. I think that there's so much power in that, and if it is something as seemingly small, but something that encourages people to reach those who they might have fallen out with. I don't know. There's something about both of these shows in particular that feels that, I don't know, connection just really is just so important. And I'm a little brain dead, forgive me. It's been a bit of a couple of days, so I feel like I'm rambling, and I hope that makes sense. But yeah, as I really step back and think about this entire season, of course, family, that all of that is important, but in terms of what happens in people's individual lives, the change that they make, I hope that they just connect on a human level deeper. That's what I hope. Yeah.
I just hope people come and hear a good story, and leave having had a good time because they heard a good story, well told, and whatever the connections might be, whether it's about love, whether it's about daughters and sisters, I want people to come and hear a good story, and I think these are two really good stories.
Yeah.
So.
I think from my perspective, one of the things that kind of smacked me in the face in the best way immediately was the incredibly clever repertory casting that is happening, where, and you'll see it in your programs when you come to see the show, there are many connections that are very different from character to character and some that are very similar from character to character. So there are echoes of Joe March in The Fool and echoes of The Fool in Joe March. So those are things that I think, it kind of becomes fan fiction. Like it's like a choose your own adventure in a way where, we also see Angela, who is playing King Lear, who plays Marmee in our production, two very different parents.
Yeah.
But as the wheel of fortune turns, so do we all in our lives. And I think to kind of see, and then with Comedy of Errors as well, to kind of see the differences and similarities, and then not only that, also to just stand back and just watch the actor range that is, really impressive. So I think that there are these sort of Easter eggs that happen between the casting of the two shows that I'm really looking forward to seeing. So I hope you are too.
And when you add in the Comedy of Errors to this Spring rep, you're also getting a story about parents and children, and separation and reconciliation. And in Shakespeare, I don't think there's a play of his, certainly not one that I'm familiar with, that doesn't touch on reconciliation and forgiveness in one degree or another. The Comedy of Errors, it's huge, I think. And I think that's a part of it too. Just finding our way to forgiveness, I think is a huge thing.
Other questions? Yes.
So I'm hearing that I didn't realize that. I was thinking you come and you work with Little Women, and you have a whole separate thing doing King Lear, but you collaborate as directors. You know what each other's doing, and you're working.
Well, no,
We don't know. No, I actually just met Paul today.
30 minutes ago.
How do you have
Those are
share-
in my own brain. I'm sorry. Like the Easter eggs were for me as being familiar with both plays and kind of making those connections myself.
They do share one very important component, well, a couple, of the Playhouse and the cast, right? So it's not,
Right.
they're not working with separate casts for the show. One of the unique joys of repertory theater, and it's a kind of a dying art, where there are very few theaters in the world that still produce shows and repertory the way that we do, and the way that Shakespeare did, is that you have the same group of actors playing very different stories each night. And so once we have all 3 shows up and running, you can see the same group of 9 perform Little Women, King Lear, and The Comedy of Errors. And then your brain will make connections between the actors in those different parts, whether we intended them or not. But thanks for giving us the opportunity to clarify that.
Thank you. Yeah, that was me just kind of nerding out on you. I apologize.
Also, if I could add to that, in one of my first conversations with Vanessa, she mentioned the importance of the casting, I don't know what the right word is, but that there were links between the casting. And it wasn't just that there were daughters and parents in both plays, but the way in which she was hoping the casting pattern might work out would provide links. For instance, I think Joe and the Fool are played by the same actor. And I think that's a fascinating thing. And it was also particularly fascinating and challenging because, first of all, it's 9 actors, doing a pretty big play, and 5 of them are women. And how is that going to work out in a play by Shakespeare?
No husbands! Sorry, Paul, please continue.
They're in their Elizabethan man caves.
That's right, that's right.
Not a Super Bowl. And that's where an artistic director's role becomes so important because they carry with them the vision of the whole company and the whole season of plays, not just a spring repertory, but there are several seasons here. And we as individual directors, get to talk about and work on our particular production. But there's somebody else who has a larger vision and brings in the people to execute the smaller vision. So.
Yeah, it's a 4D puzzle because you got to make sure that not only that there are these Easter eggs for us to find and connections to make and stories to be told over the course of a season and a year, but that you're not burning out any one actor. Like you had to kind of distribute roles throughout this whole 4-dimensional matrix of am I going to kill my Lear if I make them also do leads in other shows? And so it's hooray, Vanessa. Other questions? Yes, Kara.
Well, I've loved, some of you I already know, but some of you I'm getting to know better, and I just was so excited, especially Erin, when you talked about lenses. And Constance, when you shared that your instance with Little Women is so fresh and new, of what was that thing when you were reading the script that hooked you in and made you go, ooh, I'm excited to do my take, my spin on it?
Ooh, that's a good question. The burning of the manuscript. And here's why, because otherwise it's a hallmark. Sorry, we shouldn't have gone. And nothing's wrong with Hallmark. I say that with so much love in my heart for Hallmark. But that's what makes it 3-dimensional, that we can see these characters and agree with them in one moment and then go, whoa, 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 in another, and to be able to see the full spectrum of what it means to be a family. And I don't know about you and your families, but sometimes people closest to us can do the things that hurt us most, or, they really know how to get us. And being able to experience that in 2 hours and not just for them to have this moment and then to reconcile it, and we get to be along with them in the journey and watch them grow, because our play takes place, oh my gosh, over I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
And so for me that's been my hook, was how do we make these people, how do we make these characters people? What's their people? So what's their function? What are their tics? When are the moments that we're rooting for them? When are the moments that we challenge them? When are the moments they challenge us? And so that's been my favorite part of getting to know this play through this lens. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, please, Bob.
Just a statement.
Of course.
About families and how they interact and that kind of stuff. I had 3 siblings, so my mother would say, not to me, of course, but to the other 3 siblings, treat a complete stranger. Because we always complete strangers. We always are very polite to complete strangers. And sometimes within our family,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
when you were talking about family relations, that made me think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You haven't even seen the play yet.
Oh, and I've never seen any or read Little Women or any adaptation or King Lear. I will.
Oh,
read King
Oh
Lear.
yeah.
It stirs it.
I
How
love
very-
that.
Tonight who have never seen Little Women coming.
How many of you have read Little Women? Okay, put your hands down. For the visual, how many of you have not read Little Women? This is exciting! I'm so
I
excited
love
for
this.
you!
I love this.
Yay!
Yeah.
I really was like, oh,
It's okay, there was a first one.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't say more of the things that I was going to say then about links between characters, because you don't need to know who doesn't die. It's fine.
Right,
Don't worry
right.
about it. Yes.
Thank you so much. I have to say that this is my first time here in this space.
Welcome.
I have a question for Erin. So you mentioned you adapted the novel, you are a playwright, you did dramaturgy as well.
So I am a doctoral candidate in history. And because I can't stop going to school. Like it's just, but I'm the kind of kid. So let's talk about my family dynamic for a second. I have an older brother who's like 7 years older than I am, and our grandfather was this very stoic, like, Marine who served in the Pacific in World War II, and he would drag us to Gettysburg and Antietam and all of these places, and 7-year-old me would be like, this is the best place I've ever been. And my brother's like, oh, look, a historical blade of grass. So that was the dynamic that happened in our family. But I always want to know more about what makes things tick. And especially Constance touched on this very briefly, especially for our actors of color. So Charlene, who is playing Beth, was interested in Chinese immigration to the United States. Rossell was interested in why a tenured university professor who, moves over to the United States in a time when he might not be very welcome. And having just a thirst for knowledge and access to many university libraries, it's one of my favorite things. And it's part of the reason why I like to adapt classic stories, because I really get to dig into the meat and potatoes, as Paul kind of coined the phrase before. And it's a really fun part of it. So I am not formally trained in dramaturgy whatsoever, but I like to play a dramaturg on TV. Of course.
The idea is how did you intersect the work of the playwright and the dramaturg, while also being doing that through Zoom? This was my
Oh yeah, yeah.
makes your work more complex.
It does, but I think that the COVID-19 pandemic kind of did a lot of damage, but did a lot of good in many ways. It made the world much smaller. In that I can live 12 minutes out of Washington, D.C. and be in a room at the American Shakespeare Center and have Thomas moving cameras around and, all of these sorts of things. And it did kind of make it a little more complex. I mean, it's definitely more fun to be in the room where you can hug everybody. But it definitely was made, accommodations were made very easily for that. In terms of intersecting kind of the dramaturgy and the playwriting part of things, because the novel spans from, we're talking beginning of the American Civil War conflict all the way into like the almost later Victorian period, there's a lot of verisimilitude that has to kind of come in with the writing to help the audience know where they are, what it feels like, what it looks like, what it smells like. We talk about the burnt feathers and, different things. And kind of having that interest in history and that interest in research makes it easier for me not only to, I'm a speed reader, I read 3 and 4 books at a time, which is infuriating for most people, but I can't live without it. So I kind of grab all of this information. It also makes it easier for me to take source material and be like, okay, got it, let's go. So then I can pull from the source material, pull from the research, and then kind of create it into this piece that gives you an updated adaptation while still giving you the feel of the time and place where we are. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
I
you're
have
welcome.
So many other questions.
I just like to know what dramaturgy is. Is that the history of the performance?
I'm going to let Leah go on that one.
Okay. So dramaturgy is the architecture of the story. So the dramaturgy of the story is how is the story built and what are the pieces that are non-negotiable and what are the other pieces doing. And a dramaturg's job is to keep an kind of a bird's eye view on the whole story. And either if your playwright is dead, you are in some ways an advocate for the dead, but more an advocate for the play than the playwright. You are the person who stands up for the story. That can involve doing a lot of extra research into what is this story and what do we need to know within the story in order to tell it. So context of characters, backgrounds, plot lines. If you're doing Shakespeare's War of the Roses, your dramaturg's going to want to know who all those Henrys and Richards and Edwards are. And if you're doing Little Women, you're going to want to know about the context of the various conflicts that are going on in the various locations where the people are. And oftentimes, the best dramaturgs are the ones who will tailor that information to the production you're putting on today. So there is sort of like the generic dramaturgy of here is the history of the Civil War, and then, here's how that history relates to these bodies as these characters in this room today for this audience is a lot of the work that we continue to do production to production.
An example of that where it was really helpful for our actors, so at some point in the show, each girl is given $1, and we say $1, and $1 doesn't really mean much to us, but back then that was $40. So them understanding the weight of what that meant, or a letter being sent requesting $40, and the response being, what does that person do? Are they going to try to throw a ball with this money? And it gives us real context so we can fill in, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes.
So thinking about the idea of what does this historical context mean to these characters in this room right now, I drove through a good portion of Virginia on my way here, past a lot of battlefields along the way. Mm-hmm. Does doing this play in this particular geographical location, does that kind of inform this particular production in a way that's different from doing it, say, somewhere else, like up in New Hampshire or on the West Coast?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think it does. It does for me. And I'm a resident here. I live here now. I'm from Houston originally and went to school in Atlanta, so nowhere near here, but then came in 2016 and I drank the Kool-Aid and I've been here ever since.
You should try it.
Yes, it does. And in particular, Erin and I had a conversation because there are 2 points where we talk about the war that's going on. And we discussed one section in particular. This is when it was so, I mean, one of the many examples of having a collaborative playwright, where I asked her for more text, because I needed to know what that person who was talking about this war, what they felt. I'm an intelligent individual, and I can piece together what side of history that they were on, and they were on the right side of history, but I need to hear them name the thing. I need to hear them condemn the thing, and I need to hear them stand in that. Otherwise, it's Hallmark. And to me, I don't care to see that. And especially in a place like here, it is very real. You go 15 miles any which way, and you will see certain things that make you go, wait, but didn't y'all lose? Yeah, and so that is the importance of this particular iteration, because I feel like even in the versions I've seen, the films and the many musicals terrible musicals I watched for free on YouTube, where they just sort of gloss over it. And it's like, if you know and you have context and you can piece it together, but I didn't want anyone to guess what side of history this family was on. It's important that everyone know. Yeah.
And dramaturgically speaking, there is precedent. The Alcott family were known abolitionists. They were people who kind of rubbed elbows with the governor of Massachusetts, and the Shaw family, who was responsible for helping to found the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, which was all Black men. And Bronson Alcott and his wife Abigail were both staunch abolitionists who they are now finding out were part of the Underground Railroad in Massachusetts. So there is a foundation for the marches to be marching on the right side of history, for sure.
And lastly, that helped our actors, our colored folks in the cast, who in particular two of the sisters. What's my place in here? How did I get into this family? And we had the dramaturgy to back it up and say, we are 99% sure that these folks would have seen potentially that a mother or someone who was passing through the Underground Road and could not take this baby with them, that the marches would have taken them in. And like many adopted families with all kinds of, full spectrum of color of the rainbow, we don't say that's the adopted one. We say that's my sister. That's our story. Right. Yeah.
We have time for one more if we have a burning desire. Yes, CJ.
So we see what you're doing here now at ASC. Obviously, King Lear is going to be amazing. Little Women had me crying at the rehearsal. And right now, I'm just thinking about all these beautiful thoughts. What is the next thing we should be looking for from you?
Shameless plug time for yourselves.
Was that a plant? That was
I'm like in love with all of you, and I want to stalk you on the internet and tell me, where can I find you?
Where can I find you? Yes.
Next, March 22nd, I'm directing a tribute to Nikki Giovanni for the Virginia Festival of the Book, which will be at Paramount Theater in Charlottesville if you are around. That's their big headliner event. And that is new information as of yesterday. So
hey.
So I am in the midst of adapting another classic, which is very exciting. And I also recently received a Maryland State Art Council creativity grant for a play that I'm writing called The Midnight Crow and Other Birds, which is the story of Elizabeth I having to execute her cousin, Mary Queen of Scots, and her mom shows up. So Anne Boleyn, who has been dead for a bajillion years at this point, shows up. Elizabeth is in her 50s when this is happening, because I'm very conscious about writing roles for older women because they are so few and far between. Thank you. And it has this wonderful Greek chorus of Henry's wives, ladies in waiting, and they all give absolutely terrible advice. Oh. So it is a comedy and a dream play, and it's a lot of fun.
Send it to me.
I will. I would love to.
Well, next step for me is I drove here from Oregon.
Goodness.
That's commitment, Paul.
And I'll be driving back. And I've got a couple of things coming up. One is I'll be directing a production of Federico Garcia Lorca's Blood Wedding at Southern Oregon University and in my hometown of Ashland, Oregon. But I also, I'll try to keep this short. In 2019, I became heavily involved in Pete Buttigieg's campaign for the Democratic Party presidential nomination. Had a great experience, was a grassroots fundraiser, became a member of his Arts Policy Advisory Committee. When he suspended his campaign, I was invited to join Joe and Kamala's Arts Policy Advisory Committee, which I did. Very exciting experiences, two very different experiences. And then when Joe won the election and the dust settled on all of that, which I believe the dust settled on that. Others don't. Anyway, I wrote a book about it, a memoir called Paul for Pete, Politics, Theater, Life, One Man's Adventures, or How I Became a Septuagenarian Fanboy.
That was the best title ever.
In its fourth printing, and people who read it and liked it said, you know, you have a one-person show in here. I thought, oh no. That flower is dead. So anyway, it was pandemic time, and I thought, well, why not? I did a recording of the book, and why don't I try taking this 10.5-hour recording and adapt it down to a 2-hour stage presentation, which I've done. I performed it in Kansas City on my way here. I've got performances coming up in Seattle when I get back, March 2nd and 3rd. If any of you know anybody in Seattle, tell them.
Yeah.
March 2nd and 3rd at Seattle Center, the Black Box Theater at the Armory at the Seattle Center. Anyway, so those are the things.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Yay. Well, thank you all so much. That is the time we have. One more round of applause for our fabulous panel of people. Come and see Little Women tonight and King Lear next week. Yay!